I've seen a lot of people online, on Twitter, and in the YouTube comments saying Asmongold lost his mind in this video. So we'll watch it. Bro uploaded the video called Who Controls the Internet. Thank God he took off that gay ass shirt. Let's see what Baldy's saying. The second best bald streamer on the platform.
Hi, today I want to talk to you all about wokeness and where I think it came from.
Okay.
So a lot of people don't really understand how all these things came together.
I can tell you exactly where wokeness came from. I've made many videos on this, in fact. So what happens is that we are currently in a gynocentric society. And what that means is a society that is made for women. The reason why society is made for women is currently we have no war or no battles that the men need to go into. So in the moments of peace, we are getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And the United States has remained peaceful for too long, despite all the evils in the world. So we are getting weaker and weaker. And when you don't have to worry about where food is coming from or any invaders coming into our country to kill us, we start thinking of other problems like, what gender am I? Maybe I'm a cat. So essentially, the United States has remained relatively peaceful. All of its people have had their needs met. And this also happened with the fall of Rome, where now we're going to become incredibly weak and soy. And the next time people come to our soil, we're going to get obliterated unless we lock the fuck in, which all of our sleeping soldiers will awaken all at the same fucking time. But essentially, too much peace has brought us weak pussification.
And how we experience probably the highest and the biggest level of censorship that at least I've experienced in my lifetime between the years of, I would say, 2014 and 2024.
Yes.
Now, what I find to be the most ironic about this is that the main thesis of what I'm going to be talking about is the way that you created the unholy matrimony, the unholy trinity between ideologically captured media, bad faith capitalism, and mentally ill activism.
Yep.
And these things put together.
It's because celebrities and figureheads are rewarded to pander to mentally ill people because those are the ones who will support you no matter what. They will throw out all logic and defend you no matter what. That's exactly what Hassan Piker does. That's exactly what Billie Eilish does. That's what all these celebrities do because you want an army of mentally ill retards that will defend you to their death. Because me, people like Asmongold and myself, we pander to logical thinking people. And the problem is these people have jobs. You want to know a fun statistic? Did you know that the majority of Hassan Piker viewers are unemployed and live with their parents? Yeah. Are we surprised? No, not really.
They're all created an apparatus that I want to construct and then deconstruct and talk to you all about how it actually maintained power and how it manifested and projected that power throughout the entire internet. So fundamentally, what I find to be the most ironic about all of this is that the main people that are the biggest social justice warriors, the biggest woke people, the people that care so much about all of these different issues, almost every single one of them hate capitalism. But in an ironic sense,
they all partake in capitalism. Oh man, hate capitalism, goes to Walmart, drinks Starbucks, has an iPhone. Shut up.
None of their ideology would have ever been tolerated by anybody if capitalism wasn't there that was insulating it from criticism. And I want to talk about why that happened. So we're going to go back. We're going to go way back to 2010 to 2014. It depends on how you want to define it, but that's where I would really start the beginning. So that's whenever you started seeing terms of service on websites. That's whenever you started seeing words that you couldn't say. That's whenever, instead of telling people, if you don't like it, don't look at it, instead of that, you decided to instead tell people, if you don't like it, then nobody can look at it.
If you don't like it, then mass report it.
Why did these things change? What happened? Why was it that a place like Reddit, for example, that was the open bastion of free speech,
it now has a 97% user base that agrees with left-wing ideology? Reddit is a cesspool of retarded liberals. That's why you should not give a fuck about what it says. Honestly, 4chan is more reliable these days than fucking Reddit.
Suddenly changed and then allowed itself to be completely colonized by a small manufactured minority of people and a manufactured consensus of ideas that is really not representative of their user base or really of anybody in real life either. How did this happen? And I'll tell you exactly how it happened. It's actually very simple. It happened because of money. So what happened between 2010 and 2014? You started getting a lot of ads. You started getting a lot of advertisements. You started getting a lot of, ways that these companies and these websites were
He thinks 2010 through 2014. I think 2020 was the peak of mental illness and censorship, and that's because of COVID. I think COVID is what's really sent us over the deep end for our logical takes, and practice that we now have to abide by.
Basically making money. And if you look at this on the stock market for any of these different companies, this is very clearly the growth period of their business. This is whenever they started really making a lot of money, because a lot of people falsely attribute the woke era to something that was happening during COVID, which I think was the fever pitch, but it wasn't the entire disease.
Sure, I can understand that take too, but I really do think it's COVID. You can say that is what put the bomb there and COVID lit the fuse, but I think the lighting the fuse is a bit more important. I mean, COVID was bad.
The disease actually started between 2010 and 2014, and it was manifested by advertising, and then
I disagree with this, but I'm willing to hear him out.
Companies wanting to maintain that advertising money in order to maintain the to maintain the advertisements to continue making more money. So what happened is that,
I'll pause one more time, but we're talking about this. The reason why I think COVID was such a big turning point for America was because the government got the go-ahead to where if they make something up and perpetuate it so widely that they can control us as a people, and they really went to see how far they could go, right? I want to remind you, in 2020, they say COVID, you might die, don't leave your house. Everybody listened for like 3-4 years. The Hananta virus that had a 33% mortality rate, everybody ignored for a week, and magically, nobody's talking about it anymore. Nobody's isolating. Nobody's wearing masks. Nobody's even talking about it. And now it just disappears, right? That's what happens. They are trying once to get in control. So the world said, nah, fuck you, I'm not isolating. They say, oh, okay, well, I guess the Hananta virus doesn't exist anymore. It's interesting, right?
you had these activists and people that are working inside of media companies, and then the media companies are running smear campaigns. They're talking about how, this website is allowing, racism or dangerous language or X or Y thing. And we're not even talking about the COVID era, by the way. Keep this in mind. This is back in the, Gamergate and even pre-Gamergate era. This is when these things were happening. So what really was going on is that they kept making articles and they kept saying that, like, oh, this website is allowing X, Y, and Z content, and it's horrible that this is happening. Then there was a harassment and a advocacy campaign that pushed the advertisers that were advertising on the website, that was basically egged on by these ideologically captured media apparatuses and individuals too, to put pressure on these companies, because companies, you have to admit, you have to understand, are they're not moral, they're not immoral, they're amoral. If Hitler won World War II, most of these companies would be selling swastikas.
It's very true. Companies don't give a fuck. They will just pander to whatever makes them the most money. And by the way, same thing with content creators. I'm also going to take a firm stance. I think Asmongold looks great here. He needs to go to the gym, though, but he's looking better, and I like that.
It's important to always remember that. When a company thinks that your social cause...
They're not excited to do gay pride because they give a fuck about homo. They're excited because putting a trans or gay flag in their restaurant will earn them a lot more money. 30% probably. And they just see you like cattle.
Or your social opinion is the correct social opinion, the odds are it's because they think they can make money off of you if they tell you that. That's the only reason. Why do you think they all care about pride? Well, it's because they can sell something with a rainbow on it.
There it is.
So anyway, these companies care about money. And so what happened is that the media apparatus created and manufactured a false consensus that everybody was upset and angry about these types of behaviors, right? Everybody was upset about this. People were super mad. And now these companies have to take action. They have to do something. They have to act. And this is what's happening also, by the way. It happened inside of mainstream media as well. You saw different shows that were, pushing ideologies that were not necessarily what people accepted in terms of, culturally acceptable. And I think that,
by the way, fun statistic, over 73% of Netflix kids has LGBTQ ideologies promoted in it. They really are going after your kids, and parents don't want that shit.
Really, if you take a step back, think about the term brand friendly. Think about that term, brand friendly.
People who aren't parents think they want that. Real parents don't want that.
Friendly. What does brand friendly almost always mean? That means at least something that is either agnostic to politics or leftist leaning. And I think that really kind of gives away the game, doesn't it? Because fundamentally,
you're allowed to put free Palestine in your bio. You're allowed to say trans rights in your bio, but you're not allowed to say I don't support Palestine or I don't support trans ideology. Right? So you're allowed to say you support things, but you're not allowed to say that you don't support things. They consider that hate speech.
Every single one of these companies always kowtows to this group of people. Now, why did they do that? Is it because they're the majority? Well, if Donald Trump won the election, it seems like that's not the case.
Absolutely.
So why actually do they get listened to? It's actually extremely simple.
Because more of them are on the internet.
It's because these people are very good at institutional capture, and they've
Sure.
done an incredibly good job at it, whether it's businesses, whether it's HR departments, whether it's media companies, or whether it's other forms of NGOs, or just different media apparatuses that are third party.
You can say Black Pride, that's W. You can say Mexican Pride, that's W. You can say Asian Pride, that's W. You say White Pride, now you're a alt-right Nazi.
Exist on the internet, or even individuals that are just politically minded that want to advocate for something. And I think that they're very strategic and they're very effective, and they have been. And it took a long time for people to identify this and then begin to develop countermeasures like what we have now. So anyway, all of these people have basically created this entire permission structure around language. And the permission structure around language enabled people to accept that certain things were just simply not allowed to be said. And this manufactured the ideology of being brand friendly. This could not have happened without mainstream big companies enforcing this ideology by the rule of money. If there was no money involved in any of these companies, then none of these companies would have changed.
That's why you vote with your wallet.
You used to be able to say the N-word on Twitch. You
Yep.
used to be able to say the F-word on Twitch.
Yep.
Do you want to know what changed? Advertisers changed.
Yep.
What do you think the probability is that every single company suddenly grew a conscience and wanted to make all of these different stores against the rules at, ironically, the same time that they all got a bunch of money for advertising?
This is a very good point. That's why I really support Rumble, because it offers you advertisements regardless of what your political views are, and it has complete free speech. You've never heard of somebody getting banned off Rumble.
What do you think the odds of that are? Well, I'd say what the odds are. It's 0. They're doing it for the advertising money. That's always what they were doing it for. So why is it that these companies are listening to these people?
Yep.
Well, this is the two-part thing of identity capture and just basically capture in general. So you have the media companies that have been taken over by these people who want to weaponize the media companies' influence in order to push their ideology. This is relatively obvious. I think that we all know this is what happens. But then the second thing is that people that work inside of the actual companies themselves also have some of these ideologies, and they create an alarmism around not making these people happy. Now, I think that you've started to realize that usually whenever these people are upset, it's not a boycott, it's a goycott. Nobody cares, it doesn't matter, and everybody that's angry and upset about it, there's really no effect that really has. So
Yep.
if you upset these people, you saw this with how many video games where it's like, okay, well, we're gonna own the chuds, and then nobody owns the game. And so that's really not a good way,
Yep.
not a good way to keep your job, is it? Sure seems
True.
that way. Look at Bungie. So anyway,
Bungie got fucking obliterated, rightfully so.
what happens is that people inside of, HR departments and other types of administrative and influential positions at these companies use those positions in order to manufacture alarmism around the manufactured consensus. And I apologize, I'm using these words all the time, but I just want to make sure that I make it completely clear that none of this was organic and none of this was done because people wanted it. Nobody
Yep.
actually wanted any of this. This was forced on people, and it was done so by the unholy matrimony between mentally ill advertisers, there's that too, mentally ill activists and cynical advertisers that are trying to cater to the lowest common denominator of
Absolutely.
capitalism, and failing massively, by the way. You can see that with Bud Light. So anyway, all of this has happened. These companies now are then taking away partnerships, they're taking away advertising, and they're changing the ways that they want their stuff broadcast and their stuff advertised. And that causes these companies to create a culture around basically playing it safe.
That's why when anybody ever describes a content creator as wholesome, I'm like, oh, okay, so you mean fake as fuck, right? Like, a wholesome content creator just doesn't fucking exist. Where they just have no opinions ever. They're always smiling and laughing all the fucking times. Like, bro, you don't exist. Like, look at Genshin Impact content creators. None of these people have a legitimate bone in their entire fucking body. And they have no opinions whatsoever besides the politically correct ones. It's so embarrassing that people fall for their fucking ploys. It's humiliating.
They don't want to take any risks. They want to make sure that nobody does anything wrong. And they also don't
Because they want to be a safe space for their incredibly diverse audience.
Don't want to attract the negative attention to the media class and to the activist class, because if you attract negative attention from them by not doing what they want, then they manufacture conspiracies, they try to create negative sentiment about you, and then they call you, like, I mean, nowadays, right? I mean, how many people are being called a Nazi? It's like, oh yeah, I'm not seeing your point of view, I guess I'm a Nazi now, right?
There it is.
That's the way that the world works.
True.
And fundamentally, I think this was very effective. Now, anybody that plays Classic WoW knows that if you cast the crowd control on an opponent too many times, it begins to have what you would call diminishing
returns. Yep.
And I think at this
ain't nobody give a fuck being called a Nazi or a racist anymore. Nobody cares. These words have lost all meaning.
point, it's
And that's why we should normalize the N-word, because if everybody were to say it, it would lose all power.
basically just on the immunity stage. But for many, many years, this was an effective way of shutting down conversation.
It was.
Sexist, racist, misogynist, like Nazi, far right, etc.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'm all those things plus 10.
All of these terms were used as buzzwords in order to
I don't give a
allow
fuck.
that media class to
If you stop giving a fuck, they lose all power.
pressure the advertising and the business class, to pressure the social media class, to pressure everybody else to adhere to their ideology and their language. And that's exactly how it happened. And I think that let's talk about, and obviously this just kind of got worse and worse and worse and worse. And the reason why it got worse and worse and worse is actually something that's very much a parallel of what's happening with the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is going through what I would say is basically a civil war. This is kind of similar to the Tea
Yes, because if you are far left, then anybody to your right is now far right. So it's becoming like a purity test for who's the most far left. And if you're not that person, then everybody else is a Nazi. The amount of far left and left infighting is insane. Whereas people on the right are like, oh, you're not retarded. Oh, great. Doesn't matter.
Party happening in like the late 2000s and maybe the early 2010s in the Republican Party. But I would view this to be slightly different because it's much more existential. You had people that were not really involved in any of these things because they cared about them. They were involved in these things because
they were financially incentivized to be involved.
It made them feel good. And this is something that's becoming more and more obvious, is that many of these companies and many of these people are not really adopting these social causes out of any sort of like real genuine intention or real genuine care. They're adopting social causes as social accessories. They're using their pride flags, their Palestine flags
as weapons,
and their trans flags, or like their coexist bumper stickers. They're not using these as actual pieces of advocacy. They're using them as social accessories so they can signal to other people that they're a good person.
Yep.
So what the point of that is that
the reality is nobody actually wants to be a good person. They just want to be seen as a good person because image is everything to these people.
They're actually
it's all optics.
Is no real kind of end goal. There's no ideology, that there's no light at the end of this tunnel. There's no North Star that these people are working towards. And that's the reason why the ideology continues to self-radicalize. It's because it was never about ever doing something and achieving something and meeting a goal. It was manufacturing consent, enforcing that consent and that permission structure on the entire population, and then feeling like a good person for doing it.
Yep.
And that's the most important thing. It's not because of the people. It's not because of the people they're trying to help. It's because the main person they want to help is themselves, and they want to help themselves feel better. And that's the reason why it's become more and more radical. And I think that it was generally tolerable in 2014 to 2019.
Why do you think so many streamers do charity live streams? It's not because they actually give a fuck about the cause. They just want to be seen as a good person. And they also want to get a tax write-off. That is the only reason.
But COVID really sent it into a, pun intended.
And by the way, if you've ever supported the Trevor Project, you're either retarded or you're a
a fever pitch, right? And it really got a lot worse. And the reason why I think it got a lot worse is actually very simply because you had everybody staying inside, companies are spending infinitely more money, and I think obviously you had social unrest and everything else. And what happened is that these people just continued to self-radicalize, and because so many people were being involved and basically swept up in the movement, it accelerated the progression of the movement to the point where you couldn't even say that there were two genders anymore. And I think this...
Imagine that. We've become so deluded as a society that people lack the mental wherewithal to look down, see what's hanging down there, and say, oh yeah, I'm a boy or I'm a girl. And so many motherfuckers fell for this shit just because all of the most mentally ill people were crying about it.
Happened, the reason why it stopped actually wasn't that people got tired of it. It's because one person got tired of it. And that person was Elon Musk.
True.
I do think that it was a timeline shift when Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Ben said this shit for years.
I think that if Elon Musk had not bought
That's why I own a Tesla.
Twitter, we would probably still be living with the COVID era censorship, and
If Elon Musk did not buy Twitter, I would not have a job right now.
it would probably be continuing to get worse and worse and worse because those people still controlled all the levers of power.
Because all of the people who are like-minded, the people like me or Asmongold, wouldn't know where to congregate around like-minded individuals because we weren't allowed to talk. Elon Musk literally saved the internet. And I mean that genuinely.
They may be stupid, they may be delusional, they may be selfish, but they are very organized, and they also do have a decent understanding of political theory.
Why does Asmon always look like a wet rat? Because he has one.
And at least institutional capture to the extent that they can apply it and use it to their advantage. And I think that's commendable. I just wish they would do it to something that wasn't destructive. So the point that I'm making is that COVID, I think, accelerated all of it. Elon Musk buying Twitter was like a crack in the dam that unlocked basically everybody's freedom of speech.
I will say, though, like with this mentality that it's like 2010 through 2014, I understand what you're saying. Like, it definitely was COVID that perpetuated it to such an absurd degree that it overtook the world. Like, if you want to do, like, this fucking cutesy-pootsy, like, tiptoeing bullshit where it's like, well, it actually wasn't 2020, it was 2014, because that's what laid the foundation. I mean, we would have to go back centuries to actually find the root point, because it's been happening. Like, the quote-unquote, like, you know, foundation, we could go back and back and back and back and back. In my opinion, I like to gauge things off of when the big explosion happened, and that was COVID, right? Sure. The foundation was before, but like to find the exact foundation, we'd have to go back like fucking 1950s, whenever feminism was fucking created.
And you went from not being able to say that there were two genders to only talking about which race is the best race.
Yep.
And that's a really big change. The Overton window didn't shift, the entire building got bulldozed, and you built it somewhere else. So in the entire world, I think this is probably the biggest.
I would probably say whites and Asians are the most OP because they contribute the most to society, and they're bringing us forward like generations, and they integrate well, and they follow like, you know, the laws the most. And I think that's what I would consider like a OP race, is whichever one was best at like fitting into the mold and not being disruptive to every other person on planet Earth. Also, Asmongold is getting some crazy head right now.
Internet world, this was the biggest shift in terms of, you know, like ideology, in terms of behavior and everything, is when Elon Musk ended up buying Twitter. So he buys Twitter, everybody can say whatever they want, and then also at that point Elon said, well, I don't need advertising, and that's the reason why Twitter, I think, has freedom of speech. The more that these companies allow,
even though the Twitter payout is absolute shit for how much impressions I have, I just appreciate it as a platform because you truly are allowed to say what you want to say, and you're allowed to find people who are kind of like-minded, or at least you know, educated individuals, in order to bring them to other platforms where you can make money.
Advertising, the less freedom of speech that they will be allowed. And you could say that that's fair because companies don't want to deal with this kind of stuff and they want to be amoral. I understand that, but I think that we should also acknowledge that the genesis of all of this censorship is not simply social justice, it's actually just making money. And if it wasn't for capitalism, you'd still have people spamming the N-word all the time.
True.
And how do I know that? Well, it's because every single website that isn't run based off of advertising and doesn't, you know, depend on it, like 4chan, you know, Twitter, or...
And people who just play video games and aren't monetarily incentivized to play video games, any random public lobby, the N-word is spam nonstop. It really is all just in the pursuit of making money, obviously.
Or Rumble, for example. All of these places have, you know, Twitter or Rumble, for example.
Rumble, baby. Come to my Rumble if you're tired of these pussy-ass companies only believing in money wins. Hell nah. Rumble believes freedom of speech first, baby. Yes, sir.
All of these places have people saying all kinds of crazy things. So the moment that you give people a mask, they'll show you their true face.
Yep.
And I think that's also the reason why they want to use ways to identify people. This is why doxing is so effective. Doxing is also another effective way of doing things, and the reason why doxing is so effective is because doxing allows people to apply those consequences that they would previously apply to companies, to social media websites, which was a lot harder for them to do. Now all they have to do is achieve it with one individual person.
Yep.
And you see this also, the reversal of this with, for example, Charlie Kirk. You see people talking about like, oh, I'm glad Charlie Kirk died, and then they get fired from their job, and these people were saying like, well, this isn't fair. I don't agree with this. Well, you know, that's too bad. You shouldn't have been doing it for the last 10 years.
True.
So really what I think has happened is that now you have an environment where freedom of speech is more or less completely tolerated. And on top of it being completely tolerated, you have a shifting of the window of what is acceptable thought, the Overton window.
Yep. What is wrong think? Jesus, imagine that shit.
Is happening faster and faster and faster. I think there's a force multiplier with this. And fundamentally, I wanted to let everybody understand and help everybody understand how these media companies and these activists.
He's doing the Illuminati. He fucking signaled it, boys.
Help everybody understand how these media companies.
He's in the Illuminati. We all saw him signal it. We all see this. He has joined the foundation. He's been bought out. This is not a coincidence. Every single person who has done this hand gesture joined the Illuminati.
We got pressuring these companies to pressure other companies, news websites, social media websites, and everything else in between into making it to where you're not able to have freedom of speech. That is the main reason why it's happening. You're not losing your freedom of speech because of activists directly. You're losing it because of advertisers directly and activists indirectly that are working through as a tertiary source, actually, the media apparatus that they have ideologically captured. Whether this is video games journalism, whether it's real journalism, whether it's, well, unfortunately, basically any type of media that's mainstream to begin with. And
that's why I'm not asking for your donations, by the way. I'm not asking this. That's why anybody who goes against the common grain are the people you should be absolutely donating and supporting and clicking on their ads. Because all these brand safe people have access to infinite money at any time. But people like Nuxtaku or me or Jake or Asmon who actually say the wrong things to say according to social media, we're the people who are not going to be able to get ads nearly as often. I get to do the Rumble ad reads, but that's pretty much all I get. So those are the people who you should actually be incentivized, or like people like Nick Fuentes, right? Like that's why Nick Fuentes is 100% like community funded, because you have to be, because you can't survive at long last or long term unless you get money from somewhere. But these advertisers aren't going to pay you, and it sucks. It's like nobody wants to ask their community for money, but that's kind of what has to happen. Patreon needs to get on the rise.
You're starting to see this.
That's why I love Rumble, because it has Rumble Wallet, and 99% of what you donate to me via Rumble Wallet, I keep that. Every other website is 50 to 70%. Rumble Wallet is 99%.
It's receding, and I think it's almost pretty much gone. I think.
Yeah, or Powder, for example.
That you're going to need probably 5 more years of cultural institutional change. And in terms of the very ingrained things like education, corporate environment, corporate policy, and let's not even get into the legal system in which these ideologies are codified into law, it will take a while to actually undo all of this, but we're very well on the path to that. And I wanted to show people kind of this cause and effect, because I think that a lot of people haven't really necessarily looked at it, and they're facing they're focusing their anger at these, like weird social justice warriors on the internet. And I think that go ahead, be my guest, right? Do whatever you want to do. But those people are not fundamentally the ones that are making this happen. The ones that are fundamentally making it happen are the companies that are putting pressure on the websites, on the businesses, everything in order to fulfill and conform to their ideology. And I do believe this is a situation that's kind of like nuclear weapons, for example. You cannot afford to not play the game. I think that if you want to control and you want to not have institutional capture, you have to engage in institutional capture. There is not a world where this weapon and this tool is not used. There's only a weapon where it's either you using it or it being used against you. And so my advocacy and my ask for everybody is that when you see people that are pushing for this kind of ideology, especially whenever they're doing it through vectors of commercial aspects, like for example advertising,
Yep.
you have to push back 10 times as hard. Because if these commercial places realize that these things are losing money, you're going to start seeing all of these people, their entire power structure completely evaporate. Because
That's why you got to push back against woke slop like God of War La Fey or Dragon Age the Veilguard. Because once they see that go woke, go broke is actually true, nobody's going to give a fuck about any of this gay shit anymore. They're only doing that because that's where they think the money's at. You must not participate in games that pander to these crowds. You must not.
their power structure
And you also must make fun of those who are.
is actually maintained and enforced by capitalism. And it's not just by capitalism. I'm a big capitalism enjoyer, but
Same.
I would say it is by bad faith, unintelligent, uninformed capitalism that is being done by the lowest common denominator.
Yep.
And those are the people that you really should be looking at as your enemy. Those are your enemies, because those are the ones that are cutting the checks, that are forcing the ideologies, and they're doing it from the top down. And yes, they're being influenced by the bottom, but it's the top that is making this decision, and it's these people that are fundamentally pulling the levers of power and changing things institutionally and making it to where you don't have a voice.
Very true. He's kind of been repeating himself for the past 7 minutes. We kind of get it. Just stop supporting these gay-ass devs that make these gay-ass games and vote with your wallet, because nobody really cares about anything else other than making money. So show them the gay shit doesn't make money, and then we'll stop making gay shit. It's really that easy.